by Minister Ruston and Minister Cash. I want to assure all Australians that I can tell you nothing will distract me or my government from my pledge to them to save lives and save livelihoods. I pledged when I became Prime Minister that I would keep our economy strong. I said I would keep Australians safe, and I said I would keep Australians together. And I think if there's one thing Australians have learned about me and my government is we're a pretty focused bunch. We know what our job is. We're very focused on that, and I'll remain forever focused on that. Because I know Australians, as I said to my party room today, they rely on me, they rely on my ministers, and they rely on us to remain focused on them at all times. And that is why I believe that over the course of this most difficult past year, it has been that focus of attention on the Australian people that has enabled to connect with their great spirit of resilience. That is the platform upon which Australia has been one of the most successful countries in the world in dealing with this crisis, both in terms of saving lives, but also in saving livelihoods. We have always remained focused on the task at hand, and that continues today like any other day, and that will continue into the future. At the start of the pandemic, when we were addressing both the health issues and the economic issues, what was very clear to the government was that the sheer shock, the economic shock and impact of the COVID-19 pandemic was that the social safety net that we had would soon become overwhelmed by the level of demand that would be placed upon that. And even with the increased estimates of what we thought that demand would be, we saw it very quickly become very clear that the government's income support measures would need to be further enhanced. And so we came up with what has been, I think, and I think many others think, has been one of the key economic policies in its design that have protected Australian livelihoods and lives over the course of this past year. It was the combination of an enhanced social safety net, which was the COVID supplement, which was our first initiative to ensure that we strengthened the safety net upon which Australians would rely on. And then there was JobKeeper. JobKeeper, which effectively nationalised private sector payrolls to deliver a system of income support to a degree this country has never seen before in its history, and did so in a fair way, with the same payments to everybody that was affected, a very Australian way. And the combination of JobKeeper together with JobSeeker supplement ensured that Australians had the confidence and the certainty to move through what would have been the most uncertain period of their lives for most of them. Perhaps not Jane Malashak. I suspect she's seen some more uncertain times in her life, and that generation has. But for most of us, the most uncertain time in our lives. And those two measures came together to provide that emergency support. Now, we said it had to be targeted. We said it had to be time limited. There needed to be a clear path for how we would pursue this once the emergency situation had receded. At the end of next month, we will be in the position where JobKeeper expires, and we will be in the position where, under the legislation, the JobSeeker COVID supplement also expires. And the government has been working steadfastly as to the arrangements that will be in place after that point in time. Now, on Sunday, I said we had moved into a new chapter with the commencement of the vaccination program. I said that that would change how Australia was dealing with the pandemic. That is as true for the economic supports and other measures that have been in place as emergency measures, as it is indeed true for the many responses put in place on restrictions and things of that nature. And that will continue to change over the course of the year. But Sunday was a change day. Sunday was a day that Australia confidently moved into the next phase of how we fight this pandemic, and we battle to secure the livelihoods and lives of Australians. And so, as we come into that next chapter, and by the end of next month we will be well into that, as tens of thousands, if not greater, will have been vaccinated by that point, and the National Cabinet will have met again, that we believed it was important that we show faith once again in our social safety net. What I mean by that is we are now confident that at the end of next month, that our social safety net can once again be able to provide the support it needs to Australians as we come out of the COVID-19 recession, for that social safety net to be there for them if they find themselves without work. But we've also formed the view that that base level of support that exists within our social safety net needs to be adjusted for the long term. So we are moving from short-term emergency measures to long-term arrangements now that people can rely on should they find themselves out of work. Now, we've still got a long way to go. We understand that. And that's why the Treasurer and I, on another occasion, will be making further announcements about what we'll be doing in other parts of the economy. But the truth is the JobMaker hiring credit, that's in place. The tax cuts, they're in place. The instant expensing arrangements, they're in place. The bring forwards of infrastructure projects, they're in place. The economic recovery plan continues to roll out, but we change gears. And with that change of gears, what we are doing now is we are rebasing the JobSeeker payment to ensure that the long-term arrangements now are there for people to rely on should they find themselves out of work and to get the support they need when they're out of work. And that will lead to an increase of $50 per fortnight in that base payment. But as I'm sure Anne will set out to you, that is, of course, not the only payment that people receive when they're on JobSeeker. There's Commonwealth rent assistance, there's energy supplements, there's a range of other payments which increase the amount that someone will receive on a fortnightly basis by more than $150 extra a fortnight because of those additional supports. That's our social safety net. We are now moving. I said every day would become more normal. Moving back to a normal safety net arrangement is part of that normalising process, but we're ensuring that it's set at a base that we believe is appropriate going forward. Now, that puts the JobSeeker payment at 41.2% of the national minimum wage, which is commensurate with what it was during the time of the Howard government. It is true that this is the single largest increase in the JobSeeker payments since the mid-80s, year on year. That is true. But I think the more relevant feature to focus on is what it is as a percentage of the national minimum wage. And this brings it up from 37.5% up to 41.2%, and that is commensurate with where it sat during that period of the Howard government. Now, social security payments, welfare support, when people need it, is something we strongly believe in, and at a cost of some $9 billion over the forward estimates, including the cost between now and the end of this year. That is a contract with Australians and Australian taxpayers. Australian taxpayers believe in this system. I believe in this system, and they know it's important for people who really need it, and particularly now. Many people who may go onto this payment who have never been on it before in the months ahead, as there has been over the course of the last year. And what's important is the mutual obligation that we all have one to another in how our social safety net works. You know, every person we get in a job, they're better off and the country's better off. And so that remains our objective. If you're on JobSeeker, we will work night and day to get you off it and into a job. We have already seen 93% of the jobs come back into our economy. This is great progress, but there's so much more to do. And every person we get back off JobSeeker onto a job, that not only puts their household budget in a better position so they can have greater control over their own lives, that also supports the Australian people's budget as expressed through the Australian government's budget. That moves someone from receiving taxpayer support to being a taxpayer. And that was the big game changer that actually enabled us to bring the budget back into balance prior to this pandemic. So with those rather lengthy introductory comments, I appreciate your patience. I'm going to ask Anne to take you through those changes. And for Michaelia, there are mutual obligation requirements here that we put into this arrangement which are simply designed to do one thing, to help people get back into work.